Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfic. This will be the continuation of Protect Your Heart. This will be the final part, Chapter 4. It's a Thursday when Midoriya pulls him aside after all their classes have ended. Ever since they apologized, the two of them have been circling each other. Hitoshi doesn't want to say that their friendship has changed or evolved, because they still do all the same things, and they aren't exactly making out in between every class, but there are definitely things both of them have been doing differently. For starters, Midoriya has become a bit touchier. Before, Midoriya gave him an appropriate number of hugs here and there, but now Midoriya holds his hand at every chance and isn't afraid to drape himself over Hitoshi. Yesterday, when they were studying, Midoriya put his whole body weight on Hitoshi, and shocked, Hitoshi let the two of them fall. It all ended up with Midoriya just laying on him, Hitoshi's brain short-circuited within 20 seconds. However, Midoriya is not the only one who changed. Hitoshi has noticed himself checking his phone and texting Midoriya more often, especially at lunch times and when Midoriya is about to go to bed. They haven't been eating together much, but that's mostly because Midoriya's friends scared the shit out of him. After their moment, Hitoshi walked Midoriya back to the dorms, and he's pretty sure Uraraka would have beat the crap out of him, if not for Midoriya. Then, once everything was explained, they all took him aside and gave what could only be referred to as a shovel talk. They weren't just worried about Hitoshi hurting Midoriya, but also monopolizing his time. And so, despite how his evening training was cancelled, he was still wary about approaching Midoriya to hang out. He doesn't need the Deku Squad burying him 15 feet below. The teen assured him that there would be no need to worry over that today. So, then what do you want to do anyway? He asked to ask. He loves spending time with Midoriya, no matter what, but Midoriya has a more involved life than Hitoshi. Well, Aizawa-sensei got called out for a case, right? Anyway, he was originally going to ask Mirio to babysit, but he's already at his internship. I asked if you could come along, and he seemed fine with it. Midoriya recounts, and Hitoshi starts to understand. He'd heard a few things about Eri and Midoriya, enough to understand that the little girl is like a sister to him, but he also hasn't missed the way Midoriya talks about her past trauma and treatment. Midoriya recounted her story in a way that almost felt like he was telling his own. Eri had been shoved down by everyone around her for as long as she could remember. Her quirk wasn't something to be celebrated, despite the power it had, but a curse that was to be avoided. She was made to feel unworthy of life or happiness. It's a story that would be all too familiar to his own, if not for his parents. After their mutual confession, some of their late-night study sessions have led them to talking about deeper topics. Hitoshi's starting to get that Midoriya didn't have a picture-perfect childhood, like his quirk had left Hitoshi to believe at the sports festival. But Hitoshi doesn't even know the half of it. Most of these glimpses into Midoriya's past come from random comments and tired confessions of a friendless past. I don't have anything else going on. I'd be down to meet her, he says. Midoriya gives him a grin. Perfect. Then we better hurry. I think she's with Yamada-sensei right now, and he's got a radio show coming up soon. Then Midoriya is grabbing his hand and pulling him across campus. Hitoshi takes a moment to thank every god in existence for giving him the chance to meet Midoriya Izuku. The two of them meet up with the blonde hero outside the staff room. The little girl in Yamada's arms brightens up when she sees Midoriya. Midoriya flawlessly sweeps her from Yamada's arms and holds her like she weighs nothing at all. Do you know when Aizawa-sensei will be back? Midoriya asks, and Yamada shrugs. Maybe in 2 hours or so. If not, I'll be back soon enough, so don't worry too much, little listener, the teacher says with a big thumbs up. It's not very encouraging, but he's rushing out the door and Hitoshi finds himself waving goodbye alongside Midoriya and Eri. Once it's just the three of them, Hitoshi becomes yet again aware of how ill-prepared he is to deal with a child. Just ask his little sister. Eri is looking at him with big red eyes as Midoriya introduces Hitoshi. He crouches down a little to be eye to eye with her and says, Hi, Eri. I've heard a lot about you, he says awkwardly. Eri doesn't say anything, just looks at him very intently before leaning her head closer to Midoriya's and whispering something in his ear. Hitoshi goes as still as possible, waiting for Eri to decide his fate. If she doesn't like him, does he lose any chance he might have had with Midoriya? His friend offers him a sheepish smile and asks, Would you be okay if Eri rode on your shoulders? She likes being tall, Midoriya admits. And that's the one thing you can't give her, Hitoshi says with mock dramatics. Midoriya narrows his eyes, but Eri lets out a small giggle, which stops any revenge Midoriya had been plotting against him. I'll grow taller soon. It's not my fault I'm surrounded by tall people, he insists. Privately, Hitoshi disagrees. Considering the average height of most heroes, Midoriya chose a naturally tall profession. This is all on him. Despite Midoriya's futile attempt, he still helps Eri find a place sitting on Hitoshi's shoulders. She's a lot lighter than Hitoshi would have thought. But once she's secure with Hitoshi's hands holding her legs secure, Eri places her tiny hands on Hitoshi's head and grabs handfuls of his hair. It's not painful for him, even as she pulls on the strands and moves her hands around, grabbing different sections. I like this color, he hears her say, and a grin comes to his face. Midoriya encourages her to talk more by saying, Me too. Do you think it's your favorite color? At that, there's a mild shuffling felt on his shoulders, and Eri is quick to protest. No way! But then there's a slight pause before. My favorite color is green, she admits in a low voice. Midoriya beams in response, and he shifts the conversation toward what she's been learning. Apparently she's getting lessons from the principal. They walk around campus while talking, and Hitoshi doesn't even consider asking Eri to get off his shoulders, despite how it's gradually wearing on him. Either way, he tries to stay engaged with the conversation lest Midoriya think he's a horrible person. Do you know what you want to do when you grow up yet, Eri? He asks, leaning his head upward, her hands following along. The air goes still, and Hitoshi worries for a second that he asked a bad question. Her hands tighten in his hair, but not painfully so. I want to help people, like Deku and Shota do, she admits. But I don't know if I can, she says in a sad voice. Midoriya is quick to jump in and says, Of course you can. Whether or not you use your quirk, there are tons of things you could do. You could become a doctor or a hero, maybe even a therapist. He's so encouraging and sweet. How is it that Midoriya is perfect in every way? Really? Even with my quirk? Midoriya's smile drops for just a second, but he has it back on right away that Hitoshi almost missed the change. Especially with your quirk. I have no doubt that you could help so many people. Remember, Eri, your quirk is something wonderful. All quirks are. He reassures Eri. He's very close to Hitoshi right now, so he can look up at the little girl. He looks down at Hitoshi with that same smile, and it makes Hitoshi want to help as best he can as well. When I was younger, people told me I couldn't be a hero because I have a bad quirk. But now, I'm training to be a hero despite what they said. If I can do it, you can too, he tells her. Did they hurt you for it too? She asks, and he tenses a little before nodding. They did. There is a silence after his admission before Eri starts patting his head in what he assumes is meant to be a comforting manner. We didn't deserve to be hurt, she says wisely, too wisely. That's what Deku always tells me. You should believe it because he's very smart. And that's a whole can of worms Hitoshi's not sure if he's even allowed to open. But even the thought of Midoriya having been hurt in the past is enough to have him gritting his teeth in repressed anger. He looks straight at his friend and says, I do. He's very right. But he doesn't press for more information. If Midoriya wants to tell Hitoshi about his past, that's up to him. He doesn't owe Hitoshi his story for anything. In an attempt to lighten the mood, he starts walking over to the nearest tree. Have you ever climbed one of these before? I'm sure it'd make you feel very tall, he lets her know. I didn't know that was allowed, she says in a low whisper. Hitoshi's heart is in a little bit of pain because, damn, how depressing was her childhood. Next to him, Midoriya looks a little bit nervous, and his hands are fiddling in front of him as he rubs the scars on his right hand. What if she gets hurt? Or falls? He asks. I think Aizawa-sensei would kill me, Midoriya mutters gravely. Between the both of us, I don't think there's any way she'll get hurt. I'm an expert at climbing trees, and you can, go super fast, he offers. Midoriya gives a nervous laugh, and then Hitoshi is helping Eri up the tree. Getting up is the easy part. Later on, coming down proves to be more difficult. Once Eri is secure in Aizawa's grasp and being carried away, Hitoshi turns to look at Midoriya. There's a big smile on his face, and when he turns to face Hitoshi, he flushes ever so slightly. Thank you, Shinso, for helping me with Eri, Midoriya says gratefully. It's no problem. She's a sweet kid, and I always like spending time with you, he says with a smirk. Predictably, Midoriya's cheeks get a little darker. Hitoshi takes a bit of pride in being the cause, but not too much since Midoriya is just about ready to blush at anything. I like spending time with you too, a lot, and I was wondering if you wanted to go on a date this weekend? Midoriya asks, surprisingly making the first move. Of course, Hitoshi doesn't think he's in a place where he could have initiated that, considering how he hurt the smaller boy, but he thought he'd have to wait a lot longer. Wait, really? Yeah, but are you sure there wasn't anything else you wanted to talk about? Midoriya looks down like he's ashamed, and Hitoshi takes a step closer. I mean, he starts, but Midoriya starts talking. I guess I'm just a bit frustrated because I feel like there are still some things we need to talk about, but there are also things I just can't tell you. I'm just worried that somehow we're going to mess up on communication again, but at the same time, I really, really want to date you. But Communication isn't just something we can manifest during a study session, you know? Yet, what if we hurt each other again, or... Izuku's passionate worries delve into mumbling, and he looks so nervous that Hitoshi has to take his hand. Izuku's talking doesn't stop instantly at the contact, but rather fades with realization. "Oh," he gasps. "Thank you." "Remember when we both apologized? I told you we could go slow, and we can still do that. There's no deadline for good communication, and we can build it up as we go. If we hurt each other, we can come back and figure out how shit works between us. The only way to get good at this kind of thing is by actually doing it. We might as well take a steady step forward and see where it starts to take us." "Right," Midoriya says. "Thanks for the reminder. There's just so much going on, and I like you so much." He takes a deep breath. "Sometimes it's hard to pull away from the bigger picture." Hitoshi thinks back to when he truly believed that Midoriya, prime hero student and ideal friend, wouldn't want him around because Hitoshi wasn't good enough, all the while completely overlooking everything Midoriya did to show that he cared. "I feel that way too sometimes," he admits. "Then we'll get better together," Midoriya says with a blinding smile. "But maybe we should decide on the date first." So far, his and Midoriya's attempt at dating has been going well. They broke through cliché after cliché like they were shoji screens leading to a healthy relationship. In the past few weeks, they'd gone on a date to a cat cafe, held hands in the hallway, met each other after class, and Hitoshi still thinks about their first kiss every time. He has a hard time falling asleep, which is most nights. As far as relationships go, he thinks it's been pretty good. Not that he knows a lot about how they're supposed to go, but if he had to make a guess. They didn't get shy around each other when they first agreed to date like he feared they would, but they didn't exactly grow closer aside from the increased amount of contact. But he supposes this is going slow. Plus, he doesn't really know how relationships and friendships even differ in the first place. He'd never been as close with anyone as he is with Midoriya. He also can't imagine dating anyone other than Midoriya. Everything has started coming so naturally with him. It definitely helps that they're being more honest about their feelings. And today, they're going on their first big date. Shinohara had been right when they said the tickets would come in handy. If someone had told Hitoshi that he'd actually get to go on this date with Midoriya, he would have laughed before retreating to his room to lie awake thinking about it nonstop. But now, he actually has the chance to do it. When he'd put the idea up and admitted he had tickets, Midoriya had been over the moon happy about it. Clearly, Hitoshi wasn't as big of an All Might fan, but he was excited too. He also hopes that somehow on this date, he can ask Midoriya if they can solidify their relationship because, for all that they've done, they haven't really labeled themselves as boyfriends. Where better to do that than a convention completely dedicated to one of their teachers? Okay, it's starting to sound like one of his not-so-good ideas, but he's pretty sure that it would only work with someone like Midoriya. Anyone else would probably give him one of those looks where it's obvious they're questioning his sanity. Those are never fun, and he gets them enough from his sister. The hotel is a pretty big place. It's a bit hard to believe that Shinohara's family is in charge of such a large place, not when the teen seems like they've never heard of responsibility in their life. There is a line heading out the front door, and judging by the individuals in it, that's the line for the convention. Midoriya shoots him a smile and pulls Hitoshi into the unmoving line without complaint. The doors haven't opened yet, but Midoriya still seems happy. Then he pulls off the mostly empty, for now, backpack and rummages through the main pouch. From inside, he pulls two All Might-colored objects, and Hitoshi's eyes widen with amusement. "I got these for us, since you got the tickets," Midoriya says happily. "They're matching," he adds on with a cute smile. It's enough to convince Hitoshi to take the object willingly. It's a headband of sorts. The band is blue with red stripes, and poking up the front of the top are two bright yellow spikes, clearly meant to mimic All Might's hair spikes, tufts, or whatever they're supposed to be. It's an item that will no doubt look devastatingly cute on Midoriya, who has the kind of charm and face to pull them off. But Hitoshi already can imagine how out of place they will look on his head. He rationalizes that All Might has all kinds of fans, considering that everyone is his fan, and it should be fine. Yet he still mentally cringes when he puts them on. Luckily for him, Midoriya's smile doesn't falter for a second. In fact, he reaches up and straightens them out before saying, "There, now they look perfect on you." Midoriya's hands linger for a bit, and Hitoshi notices that he's stepping on his tippy toes. They haven't talked much about their thoughts on PDA, but Hitoshi can't help but wonder if Midoriya would be bothered if Hitoshi leaned down and kissed him right here. "Hi, sorry to interrupt you two." A chipper voice cuts in through Hitoshi's thoughts. Midoriya's hands shoot down to his side, and he loses an inch in height. They both turn to look at the speaker. He looks like an older version of Shinohara, but with bright red hair that goes down to his waist. His voice is high, and he stands a whole foot taller than Hitoshi. The teen can't remember the last time he had to crane his neck up so far. Midoriya is faring even worse. Hi? Hitoshi says, but it sounds like a guess at a normal conversation. Are you Shinohara's father? You've got that right. My kid told me to look out for you. Since you technically have their tickets, I can let you in through the side door for VIP access, if you'd like to follow me, the man offers. Midoriya looks caught between skeptical, excited, and philosophical. If Hitoshi knows Midoriya at all, he knows that the teen is considering how trustworthy this stranger is, and if it's ethical or not to just cut in line. Hitoshi makes their decision for them and follows Shinohara. It's his turn to pull Midoriya along with him. Unlike Midoriya, who has a hero complex taller than Tokyo Tower and a love for everyone he's never met, Hitoshi has no qualms about skipping a line full of randos. Midoriya makes a strangled sound but doesn't pull back against Hitoshi. The two of them pass the front desk and then go behind it through an employees-only door. A little bit further down the bare hallway is another door that reads ballroom. Shinohara's father leads them through it, and the other side is complete madness. There's All Might merchandise everywhere he looks, though realistically, he should have expected this. It's still practically overwhelming to look at. He'd always thought that Midoriya's room was a lot to look at, but it was endearing just because it was Midoriya's, and he hasn't even begun to process the cosplayers yet. There's one in practically every 3 people, all bearing that recognizable grin to the best of their ability. Really no one is as good at it as Midoriya, and wearing nearly every version of All Might's hero costume. Beside him, Midoriya is practically frothing at the mouth. They both turn to Shinohara and bow their thanks. The man shakes them off and leaves to go deal with his hotel once more. Hitoshi would get a headache just thinking about managing all that Shinohara must do, so he won't. This is so exciting, Shinso, Midoriya gushes. When I was younger, I always wanted to go, but never had the chance. Thank you for inviting me. Should we go meet All Might first, before the rest of the line comes in? Hitoshi looks at Midoriya. He knows the teen is serious, but it's still ridiculous to think about. You want to go meet our teacher? Don't you see him every day? Midoriya gives him a shameless grin. Of course I do. It's different at a convention, he proclaims proudly. Hitoshi really knows how to pick him, huh? Okay, let's go do that first. Do you know where he is? Hitoshi asks, and Midoriya promptly pulls out a map from thin air. Is that another quirk Midoriya has, or is he just that much of a fanboy? He figures it's the latter, and the two of them spend the next 3 minutes trying to find out where they are on the map and how they can pass all the convention stalls to get to All Might. It's not as easy as it sounds. The stalls have created a labyrinth when it comes to getting to All Might. Hitoshi practically has to manhandle Midoriya past the stalls because if he gets distracted by one more fan art or figure, they're going to be beaten by the stampede that's sure to be incoming soon. Unfortunately for him, Midoriya is nothing but dense and nigh impossible to pull away from the stands or their amused artists. By some miracle, they make it into a relatively short line to see All Might. There are only a few people in front of them, but Midoriya is vibrating already out of nervous excitement. He's such a weirdo, and Hitoshi likes him so much. The line moves slowly enough that they get to see it grow much, much longer behind them as the doors are opened. They spend the wait talking about the most recent anime Hitoshi had been forcing the Deku Squad to watch, and though he says forcing, he's not using his quirk to do it, and they all seem to be genuinely enjoying the show, so he will not be sorry about inflicting his own form of nerd onto the group. It also helped everyone realize what a dork Todoroki is about shoujo animes and romances. By the time they're at the front, they finished the water bottle they brought and are nearly parched. All around them, convention-goers are flooding not just the line, but all the stands nearby. Next, please. A happy-looking woman with neon green hair directs them to All Might, and their teacher actually looks a little bit surprised to see them. Despite the initial shock, the tall man still takes the two of them into a big hug. Young Midoriya, after you returned the tickets I offered you, I thought you wouldn't be coming. From inside the hug, Midoriya is protesting All Might's admission, but Hitoshi just grins. Honestly, he'd kind of suspected that Midoriya had gotten or would get tickets from the man. All Might, his date squawks. Shinzo wasn't supposed to know that. It's fine, Midoriya. I already knew. It would have been illogical if he hadn't offered you tickets, he says with a grin. In front of them, All Might shivers. You really are just like Aizawa, he mutters in a low voice. Judging by Midoriya's lack of reaction, the other teen didn't hear him. The comment just makes Hitoshi smile more. All Might seems to have a healthy fear for Class 1A's homeroom teacher, and if Hitoshi can ignite even just a spark of that, he'll have done his sensei proud. Despite how long they waited in line, they don't spend the max time allotted for their meet and greet with All Might since they get to see him on the regular. Instead, they bid the hero adieu and head off to explore the rest of the convention. Midoriya looks around at every stall, keeping in mind his budget for the convention. Hitoshi allows himself to splurge a little bit to pick up one or two of the missed merchandises that Midoriya seemed to really like. They even stopped to get a few pictures with All Might cosplayers that Midoriya really admired. Hitoshi won't say he understands the motivation behind the pictures, but he's too weak for Midoriya's smile to say anything about it. Near the end, they got a pack of All Might cookies as souvenirs for the class and bid the convention adieu with their hands clasped tight together. When they're completely out of the hotel, Midoriya tilts his head back to look up at Hitoshi. Thanks for inviting me with you, Shinso. This was really fun. Hitoshi smirks down. Are you sure I shouldn't be thanking you for letting me invite you? At least, judging from what All Might said. He's cut off by a playful hand shoved over his mouth. He smiles beneath it. Midoriya's face is red all over, and he looks embarrassed. Stop, Shinso, he whines. All Might, why? He complains, looking up to the sky like their teacher is some kind of deity. In Midoriya's mind, he just might be. Hitoshi snickers, and they continue on toward their next destination. They just have a short distance to a diner Midoriya apparently went to with All Might. Hitoshi doesn't know why or when they went to eat together, but most of him is too afraid to ask. He's had to sit through Todoroki's ridiculous theories, and he doesn't even want to give thought to the idea that one of them might be true, because that would give at least some kind of credibility to his idea that Tokiyami hatched from one of Hawks' eggs. Did you have a favorite part of the convention? Hitoshi finds himself asking, and Midoriya goes completely still. When Hitoshi stops walking and looks back, he finds Midoriya's face is completely frozen. Error 404. Midoriya's not here. It looks like he's put Midoriya under his control, but that's not the case. A favorite part? How am I supposed to decide? Midoriya panics, but Hitoshi can tell that it's not incredibly serious from the glint in Midoriya's eyes. The smaller teen looks up at him, and a grin is plastered on his face. Maybe that I got you to wear these All Might headbands and you still haven't taken yours off? He suggests. Hitoshi's hand flies to the headband in a shock of realization, and he scowls at Midoriya. I feel tricked, somehow. Really now? I think it's just your inner fanboy coming out. So glad you're learning to truly appreciate All Might and all his greatness, Midoriya says, his snarkier side revealing itself. Hitoshi reaches out to grab Midoriya's headband, but Midoriya dodges in an instant and runs backward in an effort to escape Hitoshi's reach, laughing the whole way through. Lost in the moment, Hitoshi doesn't get enough time to warn him about the group of teenagers in his path. However, the second Midoriya bumps into them, he's turning around and already in half bow, with an apology rolling off his tongue. Hitoshi jogs over to stand next to Midoriya, so he doesn't have to deal with strangers by himself. Possibly one of the worst fates that could happen to someone. The group turns around to look at Midoriya, and they both hear something they didn't expect. Deku? Or fuck, Midoriya? Hitoshi takes a closer look at the guy Midoriya bumped into. He's nothing special with black hair and flat eyes. There's a cigarette in his mouth, but it hasn't been lit yet. Hitoshi looks down and sees a lighter in his hand. Hitoshi has a hard time imagining these two ever knowing each other, at least, well, enough that this guy would use Midoriya's hero name as a nickname. Is it possible this guy is like Bakugo, throwing Deku around like an insult? Oh, it's been a long time, Takashi-kun. We should get going, though. Bye. And then Midoriya is turning to the side and walking away, in the opposite direction that they should be heading. With that, Hitoshi's ready to follow him without question. It's clear that this Takashi guy is someone that makes Midoriya uncomfortable, and that's enough for him. Then, Hitoshi catches a glimpse of movement and snaps his hand out to stop Takashi from grabbing Midoriya's wrist. Despite his interference in the situation, Midoriya still flinches back and looks up at Takashi with a look of horror. Suddenly, Hitoshi wants to snap this guy's wrist, but he resists that particular urge and drops his grip on the guy. The fuck is your problem? He said goodbye. Shinso, Midoriya says in a low voice, but Hitoshi can't place the tone, and it's going to drive him insane. Does Midoriya want him to drop this, or is he scared? Hitoshi knows that Midoriya has a face much scarier than villains, and some guy he used to know, but he also saw how Midoriya flinched. He can't help but feel protective either way. Shit, look, I'm sorry for the way I treated you and let Bakugo treat you, quirk or not. We were shitty as fuck. Why are you saying this? Is it just because I'm a UA student? No, I don't care about that. It's just recently my cousin took their life for having a dumb quirk, and it had me reflecting on a lot. You ended up at the center of all that, but I didn't think I would ever get the chance to apologize. Hitoshi tenses up. He gets the feeling he just stumbled onto what Midoriya had been keeping secret. When he looks at Midoriya, he expects a reflection of how he would feel at the situation, but instead, there is nothing but kindness on Midoriya's face. Hitoshi wonders if it's possible to be too kind. He thinks that's probably an affliction Midoriya suffers from, because how can any one person have that much love to give without sacrificing a part of themselves? I'm sorry to hear that, Takashi-kun. That must have been hard to go through. Hitoshi grabs hold of Midoriya's hand. It feels like a feeble attempt to try and stop Midoriya from giving any more of himself away. Midoriya, I'm glad you're doing well in the hero course. Have a nice day, is all Takashi offers in response before turning back to his friends with a small wave. The two UA students watch as they all walk away. Hitoshi's glad Takashi didn't try to drag the conversation, and consequently, Midoriya's bleeding heart out any further. There is a silence between them for a few seconds. Midoriya's eyes are trained on the group of teens, and Hitoshi is forever stuck looking at Midoriya. He couldn't look away if he tried. When Midoriya looks up at him, there are big, rolling tears falling down his cheeks. He seems almost paralyzed by what just happened. Hitoshi hates that this had to occur after what had been such a happy moment for them. Midoriya deserves a day to just relax and recover from all he's ever been through. Midoriya opens his mouth, but it's clear he's stuck on his words, incapable of letting anything out. Hitoshi feels like he's frozen solid. Does he move forward or give Midoriya space? Before he can decide, a small broken sound releases itself from Midoriya's mouth before he clears his throat and tries again. Just from his voice, Hitoshi can tell that Midoriya is doing his best not to sob right now. He can't even begin to imagine what emotions Midoriya must be holding back right now. His tears haven't stopped, but he's still trying to put on a facade. I'm guessing you probably have a lot of questions, he asks with broken words and a croaky voice. Midoriya, Hitoshi starts, but he finds nothing he could say is capable of expressing what he needs to. He leans down and wraps his arms around Midoriya's back. Midoriya's back tightens under his hands before slumping forward. All his weight is placed on Hitoshi, but he doesn't find himself minding. For as long as he can support Midoriya right now, physically and emotionally, he'll be happy. Hitoshi is wearing 2 layered shirts, but it doesn't take long for Midoriya's tears to soak into the fabric. Hitoshi just pulls Midoriya tighter. You don't have to tell me anything, he whispers as he rubs circles along Midoriya's shoulder blades. Just letting me be here for you is enough, he says. Midoriya shakes his head into Hitoshi's embrace. Oh, it's okay. There's not much else to tell, aside from what you already heard. Before UA, I didn't think I had a quirk because my body wasn't strong enough for it. Let's just say people don't like you very much if you're quirkless. They think it means you're useless. Hitoshi grits his teeth. He realizes that he's all too familiar with Midoriya's background. Having gone through it himself, he may not have been quirkless, but he's had many a classmate tell him he would go nowhere because of his quirk. That's not even counting the bullying he went through on a day-to-day basis. It had made him cynical of the world and other people, the main reason he had been so averse to making friends. They were wrong. You're incredible. Quirk or no quirk. Midoriya sniffles. That's not true. If I didn't have this quirk, I would have never gotten here. Hitoshi thinks on that. He can't exactly refute that claim, but he knows that it doesn't matter. Maybe. Maybe not. But I have no doubt that you would have created an impact on people wherever you went. When you meet people, you inspire them to do new things and see the world anew. Unless overwhelming kindness is somehow linked to your quirk, that's all you, Midoriya Izuku, friend extraordinaire. Midoriya lets out a wet giggle, still trying to push his tears away. Then you must be Shinso Hitoshi, boyfriend extraordinaire. Hitoshi's heart nearly comes to a stop hearing that from Midoriya. He'd said that with barely any effort behind it. None of the stuttering or nervousness that had come from the first few steps of their tentative relationship. Had he thought of Hitoshi that way the whole time? He wants to slam his head into a curb for being so daft. Did he really just make the same mistake a second time? Any comment on it will no doubt send them both into some weird frenzy about communication, so he decides to save it for a later date. Only after you, Midoriya Izuku. The boyfriend best all others, he says with a grin. It only widens when Midoriya shoves him away with a massive blush on his face. Please stop, he mutters into his hands. Too bad Hitoshi doesn't want to. I can't. I've been sent from the future with only one mission. Cheer up, Midoriya Izuku. And with that, he rummages through his pant pocket to pull out a souvenir he'd gotten from the convention. I even got you this. He dangles the keychain in front of Midoriya. His boyfriend snatches it out of the air in an instant. What? How did you know I wanted this? You looked at it just a bit too long, he says with a wink, and Midoriya's face is starting to look like a strawberry, a cute strawberry at that. You shouldn't have, Hitoshi, he whines, drawing out the last syllable. Then he stops and turns back to look at him. Is that okay? More than, Hitoshi breathes out. But I have to admit that I got you something too, he admits sheepishly. Hitoshi gasps dramatically. A hypocrite sits before me. Midoriya shushes him by placing a finger on his lips and an aggressive shh before removing it and taking out a present, whatever it is. It's wrapped in a small black bag. He unties the ribbon with shaking fingers, a side effect from damaging them so horribly, and pulls out 2 bracelets. They're simple black with a thin metal lettering, reading, Heroes till the end, and an all-might charm on the side. He remembers the campaign from after the Kamino Ward fight, a civilian effort of sorts to remind people to be heroes in their own right. When he grabs Hitoshi's hand, a shiver goes down his spine, and he straightens at the contact. Izuku wraps the bracelet around his wrist and fumbles with the clasp for a few moments. Hitoshi relishes in the feeling of the teen's warm skin against his, especially as the sun is setting and the air gets colder. Once the clasp clicks around the metal chain, Hitoshi switches their position and returns the favor by putting the other bracelet on Izuku. Thank you, Izuku, he says earnestly and grasps Izuku's hand in his own. Maybe if he holds on for long enough, he'll never have to let go. Do you still want to go to the diner, or should we head back? Izuku looks almost offended by the suggestion. What? No way, we have to go, he insists, jumping off the bench with excitement. Their hands are still linked, and Izuku uses the grasp to pull Hitoshi up to his feet. He doesn't even see it coming when Izuku uses that momentum to pull him into a brief kiss that barely lasts a second but still has Hitoshi blushing up a storm. Come on, we can't mope any longer. We still have the rest of the night, he says, and starts pulling Hitoshi along. Hitoshi knows that they still have a lot more to talk about, but for now, he's glad he was lucky enough to get a boyfriend as sweet as Izuku. All right, listeners, this concludes the fic Protect Your Heart. I hope you all enjoyed this one. I'm a sucker for Shindeku fics, and I know a lot of you enjoy them as well. Let me know your overall thoughts and reactions, and as always, thank you so much for listening.